Welcome to the first part of my series of videos breaking down and analyzing The Mandalorian, the first Star Wars show to make its premiere on Disney's new streaming service. A show that seemed to be fairly well received in a time of slight turmoil for the Star Wars franchise. With the fan-base division caused by The Last Jedi, which seems to always be fresh on people's minds, we were left without any new Star Wars content for about a year and a half, so fans were desperate for something they could all get behind, and The Mandalorian appeared to be that thing. Fans were hoping for something fresh and new and interesting for Star Wars, and I honestly think that's what we got. It's a show following the adventures of a single character in a very episodic fashion where we get quick, exciting stories. This is stuff we haven't seen in Star Wars before, and I think that's great. Taking us in new directions is a good way to keep fans interested. However, simply being fresh and new does not guarantee the show will be good, and honestly I seem to have felt differently about the show relative to general audiences. This is the main reason I wanted to break the show down, so I could see what parts of the show made me feel specific things and the reasons behind that. So that's what I'm going to do. This series is going to be split up into 3 parts that I'll be releasing every other week, with part 1 covering episodes 1 through 3, part 2 covering 4 through 6, and episodes 7 and 8 being in the last part with a conclusion about the quality of the show based on all the points made in the series. Now with that out of the way, let us begin. The show starts with an establishing shot of the Mandalorian, holding what we can kind of assume and later is confirmed to be a tracking device. And this is where we hit my first problem with the show. The show makes no attempt to explain how these trackers work, and normally this wouldn't be such a bad thing. But later in the show, another bounty hunter uses an identical tracker to find Mando and Baby Yoda clear out in the middle of nowhere. Literally the whole plot of that episode is Mando trying to find a place they can lay low, as not to be found specifically by the other bounty hunters. So are these trackers capable of finding a target's exact location? Oh god, are they capable of tracking through hyperspace? Because the trackers we've seen in Star Wars prior to TLJ required another device to be placed on the target they were tracking. But the trackers these bounty hunters have can apparently find people on the other side of the galaxy, so why does no one else in the universe use them? Okay, it's still pretty early, let's just move on. After this, we see a few humanoids hounding a fishman, talking about how they could take his glands and sell them. I don't have much to say about this, other than that it's fairly interesting world building. We learn something about this fishman's race in a way that doesn't feel like random or useless exposition. Now the door to the bar opens and we see Mando walk in, and one of the guys shouts at him that he made him spill his drink, even though the drink was spilled before the door even opened. Mando walks over to the bar and doesn't respond to any of the harassment. This is something I definitely enjoy. I feel like this adds to the intimidation factor of Mando. He shows no fear of these randos in a bar. We then get a fight scene with some, what I would call at least, well choreographed action. We then find out that the target he was tracking was Fishman. Now that Mando's captured his target, he takes him to a medieval flute player that is apparently in charge of a speeder taxi service. He uses his flute to call over a speeder that is driven by a droid, and Mando refuses by saying no droids. At this point in the show, we clearly don't understand why he doesn't want a speeder driven by a droid, but I find this as a solid introduction to the fact that he doesn't trust him. As the show goes on, we gain more and more pieces of information about his past and why he wouldn't trust them, and the fact that it's introduced so early in such a vague way sets a good foundation for the things we will learn about him later on. Now the flute player reassures him that this speeder is the latest model, and a really nice one at that. But of course he refuses, and naturally he tosses him more money. He pays more money for a worse taxi. Clearly this is just a nitpick, but it really stood out to me on my rewatch of the show. The taxi driver then takes them out to a spaceship parking lot in the middle of nowhere that is apparently home to an ice monster that tries to eat them and their ship, but they make it out alive, so it's all okay. It's exciting action, I guess, but it really doesn't add or do anything other than show that Mando's rifle has a taser function, and I guess it gets them off the planet faster. Now that they're in space, Fishman tries to convince Mando to let him go. After getting no reply from Mando, he decides to go take a look around the ship, and Mando just lets him. Fishman even jams some buttons on the wall, and that apparently opens a cabinet that holds all of Mando's weapons. He could take any of these and at least try to threaten him in any way, but he just doesn't? Okay, fine. But Mando is just cool with this? He knows he has an unlocked cabinet full of weapons downstairs, and he's just like, nah bro, it's fine. That seems pretty strange to me, but maybe he's just so full of confidence that he's not at all worried about his prisoners grabbing one of his guns and trying to threaten him. While Fishman is searching around, he finds Mando's bounties that are all frozen in carbonite. And once he gets to the last one, Mando just teleports into the scene. Like, this is pretty wild. He's not there 1 second and then bam, he's just there. Mando then grabs Fishman and tosses him into a rectangle that freezes him in carbonite. This is really strange to me. In Empire, freezing Han Solo in carbonite was shown to be an improvised method of imprisonment that they only had access to because they were on Bespin. They also say that it basically has a 50-50 chance of killing him. Also, they needed this giant machine to lower him down into a chamber to be able to use the carbonite freezing. And there's also not much reason for him to use this method of capture. He could literally just tie these people up. I guess you'd have to account for feeding them and letting them go to the bathroom, but this really feels like this was just a way for them to reference something audiences will recognize, but it ultimately ends up harming the world building for Star Wars. Next, Mando meets his boss, Greef Karga, and gives him the tracking fobs to tell him that he's captured all of his current bounties. Greef then tries to pay him with Imperial credits, and Mando won't accept them as they're seemingly no longer valid currency. He then says that the Empire is gone. This is a quick way of showing us where we are in terms of the timeline of Star Wars. We're clearly past Return of the Jedi, although we don't know how far. Mando then accepts half payment in a different currency. They then have a discussion about how there aren't many bounties that pay a high enough rate for guild members. This discussion then leads Greef to telling Mando about this totally super secret job that requires a face-to-face meeting with the client. It's very important that we know this job is very exclusive because it's definitely going to come up later. Now we find out who the client is, and it turns out it's someone from the old Empire. We get some stormtroopers whose armor is scuffed and dirty, showing us that this clearly isn't the Empire we used to have before Return of the Jedi. The Imperial then offers him a piece of Beskar, the metal used for Mandalorian armor. He then goes on to say that he can return the target either dead or alive, however returning it dead will have a lower payout. This will also come up later, but it's very important we know that the target is supposed to come back alive, but bringing it back dead is also fine. The Imperial then says they can't give him a puck, only the tracking fob, age, and last known location, and that this should be quick work for a Mandalorian. Mando then goes on to complain as if this isn't enough information for him to be able to find his target, but with how these trackers work, I'm really not sure why he would need anything else. Also, it's pretty obvious that the only reason he can't give him a puck is so we can get the reveal later on that the target is Baby Yoda, but honestly I don't think that's a big deal, especially on the first watch through. The Imperial then says it's good to give the Mandalorians back their Beskar and restore the natural order of things, implying that the work they are doing is an attempt to bring back the Empire. I think this dialogue is very well done in terms of giving the motivations for both characters. We find out that there are still factions in the universe that want to bring the Empire back, and we get a little bit of a look into why the Mandalorian would want the Beskar, as it is something that was apparently taken from his faction. We then follow Mando to the underground lair of the Mandalorians, where he talks to the armorer. He gives her the money in the Beskar that he received, and they talk about whether or not he has his signet, and that the extra Beskar will sponsor many foundlings. He says that he was once a foundling, and we get a series of flashbacks depicting a wartime scenario that follows Mando as a kid, and shows what we assume are his parents putting him in this little hideout. We get more information on these flashbacks later in the series, but I really enjoy these little hints we get about Mando that inform his history, and give us some insight into a character that we really don't get to see much emotion from. We then see Mando land on the planet that has his target on it, and we see him look at his tracker. It's so weird. He looks at his tracker and looks at his surroundings like he's gaining some kind of information from it, but all it has is a blinking red light. I don't understand what he could possibly be learning from this blinking light, but apparently it's something important given how many times he looks at his tracker and waves it around. Then we get the scene of the giant lizard dinosaur thing popping out of nowhere to attack Mando. I find it a little hard to believe that this giant lumbering lizard could get the jump on this character that's shown so many times how insane his reflexes and senses are, but I guess it's fine. Then our new character, Queel, tranquilizes the creature and saves our hero. Seems pretty lucky, but it's easy enough to assume he was already out hunting for these creatures since he seems to farm them or something. Queel then offers to help Mando find his bounty, and all he asks for in return is half of the blurg he helped capture. While we don't understand it on the first viewing, this dialogue is used as some strong characterization for Queel. He clearly wants to help and doesn't ask for anything in return. He then says that Mando will need one of the blurg in order to reach his target, as the way there is impossible to traverse without one. This is so weird to me because we later find out that there have been loads of people attempting to capture this bounty. So did all of them know how to ride blurg? Also, they really don't seem like agile creatures. They're not that big, so their stride isn't huge. Also, speeder bikes. fucking float. It really doesn't seem like terrain is much of an issue for them, but the writers really wanted to have the scene of Mando learning how to ride a dinosaur, so here we are. Now we get a nice montage of Mando and Kuiil riding their dinosaurs across a desert, with big, huge cracks they have to jump over. These cracks are so large a speeder bike clearly couldn't possibly make it over, even though they fucking float. They then arrive outside the encampment that holds the target, and Mando offers to pay Kuiil for his help, and Kuiil declines again. He then talks about why he helped him for free, and it's because the encampment is full of mercenaries that bring destruction, and once they are gone, there will be peace again. I'm really not sure what he expects Mando to do. His plan is to capture one person, not destroy the camp. But if he thinks it'll help, at least it gives us the motivation for why he would help Mando for free. He also says that since he's a Mandalorian, he will make quick work of it. Mando scopes out the area of the encampment and spots a bounty hunter droid, and we get a little shootout between the droid and the mercs. It's very entertaining to me to watch the droid take out the mercs in a way that looks so mechanical and robotic, and I really don't have anything to say writing-wise other than, how did he get here? Did he ride a dinosaur here, or did he get to use a speeder bike? Mando then teleports behind the droid and tells him to stand down, and the droid turns around and shoots him in the chest, but luckily he's got laser-proof armor, so he's pretty much alright. I have no idea why Mando thinks this is a good idea. He has so many options when it comes to getting its attention, but he goes with jumping out from behind a pillar to yell at it, and then he's surprised when he gets shot. He then tells it he's in the guild, and the droid says that it thought it was the only one on assignment, and Mando says he thought the same thing. Which is what we thought too, since they made such a big deal out of being discreet and keeping the bounty a secret. But it's fine. I guess having one other bounty hunter on assignment isn't too big of a deal. Am I right? Mando tells IG-11 they can split the reward, and IG says that's acceptable. They get into another shootout with the mercenaries in the camp, and they both very frequently get insane levels of plot armor. There's a point where IG is literally just slowly walking out in the open, and literally no one is fucking shooting at him. He's seriously surrounded on all sides, and all the guys with guns are just running around getting shot. At the same time, we see Mando wave his little tracker while staring at the blinking light and yells, "He's in there!" How do these things fucking work? What information is he getting from this blinking red light? They then get to the door that holds the bounty inside, and they get entirely surrounded. IG starts its self-destruct sequence and says that manufacturer's protocol dictates that it cannot be captured. This is a little weird to me because right now they're not in like a totally inescapable situation, and no more than 10 seconds ago this droid was mowing these guys down, but now he just thinks it's all over? Mando then talks him out of it and says, "Cover me." Then Mando starts trying to hotwire the door, and we get a lot more plot armor for both of them. They are literally surrounded by like 20 gunmen, and they're all firing perfect outlines around them. It's honestly insane to me, and definitely something I noticed on my first watch of this episode. After that, Mando says they're pinned, and IG decides to start self-destructing again, and Mando has to talk him out of it a second time. I personally find it really funny every time they get into a seemingly inescapable situation, IG's response is to just fucking kill itself. I think this is a good joke. I mean, I laughed at least. Now the baddies start wheeling up their laser minigun and start firing at them. Again, IG tries to kill himself, and Mando tells him to draw their fire. So IG runs out and gets shot a few times by this minigun, and it's a little ridiculous to me that we see this gun taking giant chunks out of this stone pillar, and then when IG gets shot by it, the lasers practically just bounce off of him. Like, look at this. It's insane. But after that, Mando pops out and lassos the gun with his grappling hook and shoots the guy using it. And naturally, while he's doing this, the other 20 armed gunmen decide to not shoot and just let him do it. He then jumps on the minigun and spins in a circle and shoots every single person in the area, because not one of them was smart enough to take cover during this. We even get someone dying and falling off the roof before he's even been shot. But all the baddies are now dead, and he goes to check on IG-11, who's spitting out some oil, but he's pretty much just fine. They then get the door open and walk into the room, and some rando bad guy pops out and Mando takes care of him with ease. This at least shows us more of his reaction and skill with a blaster, but who knows where that was when he got attacked by the dinosaur. And also, God knows where this guy was during the whole fight. He then holds up his tracker and we see the light blinking much faster, so I guess we can assume that this tracker really does just track to the exact location of the target, and my god if that's not the most insane thing. They are saying these bounty hunters had the ability to track through hyperspace before the First Order did. Wow. They then open the egg that holds the target and we get our first look at Baby Yoda, a creature that was clearly scientifically engineered to be the most adorable looking thing ever. Like goddamn, I think we all knew how big this thing would become as soon as we saw it, but the level of popularity this creature reached was magnificent. Even my cold dead heart felt a few beats when I saw this thing, but of course, we can't have something this good without following it up with something bad. IG says this creature could have lived many years, but sadly we'll never know, and it goes to shoot it. And Mando says no, we'll bring it in alive. IG then says the commission was quite specific, the asset was to be terminated. It then goes to shoot Baby Yoda, and before it can, Mando shoots IG. This shows some great drama, as we already know that Mando was a lost child that was taken in by Mandalorians. However, if you'll remember, the commission actually was very specific. They specifically said they wanted the bounty brought in alive, but proof of termination was also acceptable. This contradiction can absolutely bring audience members out of the story, but that isn't the part that annoys me the most. The part that kills me is that this shows the hand of the writers. We can now see that they clearly wanted to give us the drama of Mando saving Baby Yoda from being killed, so we could see that he obviously has a heart. But they had to contradict their own storyline to do it. They knew they needed to give Mando the ability to bring the target in alive, but they also really wanted to have this scene of him saving Baby Yoda. So here we are. They throw in this blatant contradiction and they just hope that you'll forget or not notice what they did. Instead of putting in the effort to make a story that could have had these 2 points of drama without this contradiction. And now we see Mando put out his hand to show the connection he's going to have with Baby Yoda, and it cuts to black. And that's the end of episode 1. At the start of episode 2, we see Mando walking Baby Yoda back to his ship, and we see him looking around suspiciously. He then gets jumped by 3 large humanoid creatures wielding medieval axes? Oh my god. We have this crazy futuristic world and these people are using axes? Why? Alright, off to a great start with episode 2, I see. We're then shown a close-up shot of the tracker on one of the creatures that they must have been using to track Baby Yoda. So I guess this means the Imperial had 5 people on this totally top secret assignment? Alright, I guess we can let that slide because they would need some backup to make sure the bounty got captured. Or I guess killed because during the fight, after Mando's taken out 2 of the bounty hunters, the last one just storms at Baby Yoda and tries to kill him. I assume these guys are attempting to steal the bounty from Mando, so what the hell is he doing? Even if he was successful and killed Baby Yoda, to bring him in for the bounty he would still need to take care of Mando. So you're going to want to keep fighting him, because turning your back and running at his bounty is obviously not going to work out for you. So as this thing is running towards Baby Yoda, Mando turns around and shoots him with his rifle, and I swear to God this motherfucker just evaporates. This shows us that his rifle is insanely powerful, and I sincerely hope this doesn't come back to haunt the show. We then get a shot of the tracker on the ground and the camera switches over to Baby Yoda, so we know with total certainty that he's the reason these people are here. Then it shows a shot of Mando, and I think this is supposed to be implying that he recognizes the danger he'll be in as long as Baby Yoda is with him. Now we see Mando trying to heal up his injuries with this electronic laser healing tool, and Baby Yoda walks out and tries to touch him. Oh boy. I cannot wait to get to this part of the show because I really want to tear this apart. But we're going to have to put this one aside for now because we don't really have any idea of what Baby Yoda is trying to do here. So Mando just picks Baby Yoda up and puts him in his little carrier and they move on. We see them climb over a ridge and they spot a whole bunch of Jawas tearing apart his ship. This seems a little off. We're not on Tatooine, so do Jawas inhabit desert planets all over the galaxy? They all have the same kind of society and use the exact same technology? I guess this isn't a big deal, but what makes this even stranger is that later on in the series we find out that Mando can put his ship on lockdown. And he even says that it can lock down to the point that no one could get in. So why on earth is he not always doing that? Why would he need special circumstances to lock his ship? He has no reason to do this other than making this entire episode happen, and that is a prime example of bad writing. If your plot is completely reliant on your character doing something stupid, you've definitely made a big mistake. He then immediately begins firing on the Jawas, completely disintegrating these little fuckers without trying anything else first. I don't get what his plan is here. There's like 40 of these things running around and his rifle is single shot. On top of that, he only has like 6 bullets. He clearly can't kill all of them, so of course they're going to get on their sandcrawler and escape. We know Jawas are at least intelligent enough to communicate and trade, so we could have attempted to talk to them and get them to stop. Maybe even just grab one and hold it hostage till he got his stuff back. Even if that didn't work and they all immediately fled, he'd still be in the same situation he gets himself into in the show. Now that the sandcrawler is driving away, Mando uses his rifle to shoot at what looks like a pretty shoddy part of the engine. and this does nothing. I don't really know what I expected to happen, but with how powerful this rifle has been shown to be, I definitely didn't expect it to do nothing. But now he runs after the sandcrawler and hops on. I still have no idea what his plan is here. He already knows that the Jawas have taser rifles, so is he planning on somehow killing every single one of these things? Because that is certainly an interesting plan. He then gets spotted by a Jawa who decides to call the driver of the sandcrawler. The driver then makes the genius decision to ram his vehicle into the side of a fucking mountain, and I guess luckily this does no damage to it. The Jawas then start chucking random junk off the side of the crawler trying to get Mando to fall off, even though they have tasers, but whatever. Mando shoots his grappling hook to a small pole at the top of the crawler and starts climbing again. The Jawas now start smacking the pole to get it to fall off, and it finally does. And when the pole that Mando's hook is connected to falls off, he is at least 7 or 8 feet below the top. They then cut to the Jawas on top looking for Mando, and miraculously he had just teleported to the ledge at the top of the crawler. I don't know why he doesn't decide to use his teleportation powers more often. It only ever seems to exist when it would be most convenient for the editors. Mando then climbs on top of the crawler and all the Jawas now have the stun rifles that they forgot about before. They then proceed to stun Mando, and he takes an extremely long fall onto what seems like pretty solid ground. This doesn't break any bones or just outright kill him, but it does knock him out for a little bit. But the Jawas just leave him there? They don't even try to confirm that he's dead? They're in this giant vehicle that leaves big old tracks everywhere it goes, so if he wakes up in time he could pretty easily just track them down, but luckily for Mando they just left him there. He wakes up a few moments later and he's just fine. Mando and Baby Yoda go back to the ship to check on the damages, and it's pretty clear that the ship is beyond repair. And because this guy doesn't know how to lock his gun safe, all of his weapons are gone. Now we get a montage of Mando walking, and he ends up coming back to Quill. Quill says, "I thought you were dead." He looks at Baby Yoda and says, "This is what was causing all the fuss?" And that since it's a child it would be better to deliver it alive. Mando then says that his ship is destroyed, so he's trapped on the planet. Then Quill responds that it is stripped, not destroyed, and that Jawas steal, not destroy. It really feels like there's a scene missing here. All Mando says is that his ship is destroyed. He doesn't say anything specific about what happened. Quill just magically knows exactly what he's talking about. And there's a pattern beginning to emerge here that I will discuss later, but Mando has a serious problem of leaving his ship out in the middle of nowhere for extremely long periods of time without taking the slightest care to make sure that he puts it into lockdown mode. Quill then says he can trade to get his stuff back, and Mando says, "With Jawas? Are you serious?" And Quill says he'll take him to them. Funnily enough, I wholeheartedly agree with Mando here. Does he really expect the Jawas to trade with him after he completely obliterated like 5 or 6 of them? Alright, I guess they just don't give a shit about their buddies. So now they meet up with the Jawas and Quill greets them and tells Mando that they really don't like him, and Mando says he did disintegrate a few of them. It's still so strange that these Jawas don't instantly try to kill him, but maybe they just see it as the price of doing business? Who knows? Quill then tells him that he needs to drop his weapons, and I find it strange that the Jawas even need a translator. With how much trading they do, you would assume they would know how to speak anything other than their own language. They now do some bartering and the Jawas offer him all of his parts back for his armor. Mando then tries to negotiate with the Jawas and they mock his Jawa'ese. So this guy tries to roast this fucker with his flamethrower. Like, are you kidding me, dude? We just went through this. He can't kill all of them, and they obviously all still have the taser rifles they had in the previous shot. I don't understand why Mando has to act so stupid so often. It blows my mind. Quill then tells the Jawas that since he's Mandalorian, he cannot trade them his armor. So the Jawas ask for Baby Yoda. And since we're obviously not getting rid of him, he says, "What else?" All the Jawas gather in a circle and chat and then say, "Bring us the egg." So now the Jawas take Mando out to a cave that apparently holds the egg. Mando walks up to the cave and adjusts his armor and weapons. Now we get to see Mando being extremely careless. As far as we know, he has absolutely no idea what is waiting for him on the inside of this cave. It could be literally anything, even a gigantic sleeping rhino for all we know. He doesn't even turn his flashlight on until he's pretty deep into the cave. And the funny thing is that in the very next episode, the show establishes that he has thermal vision so strong he can see people through walls. So why in the hell is he blindly walking into this cave that for all he knows is extremely dangerous? Well, I think I know. The writers really wanted to have this suspense of him wandering around in the dark with nothing but a measly flashlight. But of course they have to make Mando look like a total moron to do it. So while Mando is looking around, we get some growling and a shot of the Mudhorn opening its eye. Now I'd like to take a quick moment to just appreciate how well done the CGI is in this show. I know this is mostly to do with the ridiculous amount of money that Disney threw at it, but people still had to create these images, and almost everything in this show looks so damn excellent. But we cut to a shot outside of the cave. We see some blaster shots go off inside, and then Mando gets tossed right out. Mando then tries to shoot the Mudhorn and his gun jams. I guess even with all this advanced technology, they still haven't figured out how to keep their guns from jamming from some mud. We also get to see that Baby Yoda is here with them, because I guess Quill couldn't take care of him while he goes on this dangerous mission. We then get an extended sequence where Mando takes on the Mudhorn, and he makes some extremely silly decisions about how he uses his gadgets. Like when he's getting charged by a wet rhino covered entirely in mud, and when it's about 5 feet from him, he tries to blast it with his flamethrower, and then after that doesn't work, he shoots it with his grappling hook just to get dragged. Not sure what he expected to happen, but alright. We then get a shot of Mando nearly incapacitated, and the Mudhorn begins to charge him again. Mando gets up to his knees and holds out his dagger and puts down his head, almost like he's accepting his death. And as the Mudhorn is charging him, we see Baby Yoda reach out with his hand and oh my god. Not only is this little infant able to use the Force in any notable way, he's not only able to stop this giant creature in its tracks, he's also able to lift it into the air. Baby Yoda is already more powerful than Luke was in Empire, and I don't know if I mentioned this, but he's a baby. This child is not even capable of speaking or formulating thoughts, but it can already use the Force with decent proficiency. The only redeeming quality of this level of power is the fact that Baby Yoda gets knocked the fuck out for at least a day after this. But still, the fact that he can even use this power is already so bad. However, what's arguably even worse than that is that Mando does absolutely nothing while this is happening. Like, he's been given the most Deus Ex Machina you can be given, and he decides to just sit there, staring at it. I assume it's because he has no idea what's going on, but come on, man. Then once Baby Yoda tires out, he drops the rhino and Mando finally decides to do something. And what he eventually does is just as baffling. He stabs this giant creature in the neck with what looks like a 3-inch dagger. And of course that instantly kills it. Are you serious? I'm surprised this thing even makes it all the way through its hide, let alone dropping this fucker instantly. Holy hell, what a sequence this was. So many insane things happening in such a short amount of time. Oh, fuck. Sorry, that was a lot. Mando now checks on Baby Yoda and then ventures back into the cave. He finds the egg that is for some reason covered in a carpet and he takes it back to the Jawas. These things go absolutely nuts over this thing. It's hilarious to me, honestly. They seriously freak out over it. But aside from that, Mando says to Quill that he's surprised he waited for him, and Quill says he's surprised it took so long. They then get Mando's parts back and start heading back to the ship. On the way back, Quill comments on how Baby Yoda is still sleeping, and then asks Mando to tell him the story again, because he doesn't understand what happened. And Mando says he doesn't either. And here we get two patterns I've picked up on when it comes to Disney Star Wars. They love to make the Force insanely easy for certain beings to use, and they also love to give their characters very selective memories, especially when it comes to the Jedi. Just like how Rey thought Luke was a myth in The Force Awakens, Mando knows nothing about the Jedi, even though he lived through the Clone Wars, and in canon written by the same man who wrote this show, we are told that the Mandalorians fought a war against the Jedi to keep their independence. In the Clone Wars series, the Mandalorians are shown to hate the Jedi, and the Jedi played such a big role within the politics of the prequels. I find it so hard to believe that a character that grew up in this time, and grew up as a part of a culture that hates the Jedi, would have no idea what they are, and by extension what the Force is. At least some semblance of an idea of what it is. Alright, let's just move on, I guess. They make it back to Mando's ship and he says there's no way they'll be able to fix the ship without a full maintenance facility, and even then it's going to take days to fix. So naturally, seconds later we get a montage of them fixing up the ship. I'm so glad they threw in some shots of Baby Yoda sleeping, because if they hadn't, that move would have been entirely unforgivable. Mando offers to give Quill a split of the reward, and Quill says that he can't accept because he's his guest, so he's obligated to help. I have a very real soft spot for Quill. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe it's because he's the most consistent thing in this show, but he's definitely my favorite character. Mando then offers to bring Quill on as a crew member as he needs someone with his skill set, but Quill says he's worked a lifetime to be free of servitude. I honestly like seeing this. Mando trying to create a crew of people with complementary skill sets compared to himself, and I think it could have been really interesting to see if that were the direction the first season had taken. However, Quill declines and Mando thanks him for all that he's done. Mando starts up his ship, and I just have to say again how awesome this show looks. The way his engines fire up, the smoke, and the ship taking off, it all just looks so nice. But after they make it to space, we see Baby Yoda wake up. Mando's ship blasts off into hyperspace and it cuts to black. Whew. What an episode. I honestly can't believe my script for this episode ended up being shorter than the script for episode 1. I felt like there were so many things going wrong in this one, but oh well. This one's done, and hopefully episode 3 will be better. Episode 3 begins with Mando flying his ship back to the planet that he came from to bring in Baby Yoda and collect his bounty. He gets a transmission from Greef telling him to return the quarry directly to the client. He says he has no idea if he wants to eat it or hang it on its wall, but he's very antsy. We then get some gloriously adorable scenes with Baby Yoda on the ship, and Mando flies down into the town and walks to meet the client. We then see Mando arrive at the lair of the underground Imperials, and they let him in. During this intro, we see Baby Yoda starting to get more and more distressed, almost as if he knows what's about to happen to him. One of the stormtroopers grabs Baby Yoda's carrier, and Mando tells him to be careful with it. This is to tell us that Mando is definitely getting worried about what's going to happen to Baby Yoda. When the Imperial sees Baby Yoda, he gets really excited and brings his own tracker up to it to make sure it's the bounty he was looking for. After the scientist checks out Baby Yoda and says he's healthy, Mando asks the Imperial how many fobs he gave out. And the Imperial says that the asset was very important to him, thus he had to ensure its delivery. But if he was going to give out this many fobs, why would he make such a big deal out of keeping it a secret? Why does it take such a long discussion with Greef for him to even bring up this job? If this job was just being handed out to anyone, and Mando is one of his best bounty hunters, wouldn't he be the first person he'd offer the job to? Also, they gave him a piece of Beskar as a down payment for the operation. So were they giving everyone the same down payment? Because that seems like it would be insanely expensive. And holy hell, man, if this asset is so important, why not just go get it yourself? We're shown later that these guys have a sizable chunk of soldiers with them, and most likely more than the camp Mando got them from. And if you think it's because they needed to keep their location hidden, well, it's not. Their target was on a completely different planet, in the middle of a desert, in a base of mercenaries that I'm fairly certain have no connection to the Republic. So what on earth are these guys doing? I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty certain the writers reread their scripts for episode 1 and 2, and were just like, oh shit, we definitely made this assignment seem top secret, but we're gonna need all the bounty hunters to attack Mando later. So they said, fuck it, we'll come up with something, I'm sure. The Imperial then says to the winner goes the spoils and pulls out a whole bucket of Beskar. He then says, such a large bounty for such a small package, which I'm pretty sure is just him trying to emasculate Mando, but okay, maybe not, I don't know. Mando then asks what their plans are for Baby Yoda, and the Imperial says it's the code of the guild that these events are now forgotten, which I really do like. This is clearly the most logical response to a question like that. Of course they wouldn't tell him. He then says that the Beskar is enough to make a handsome replacement for his armor. Mando then takes his bucket back to the armorer, and while he's walking it there, we see him get a bunch of what seem like dirty looks from the other Mandalorians. When he reaches the armorer, she tells him that she can form essentially a new set of armor for him. While this is happening, a whole bunch of Mandalorians come into the room to see what's going on. One man walks up and grabs one of the pieces and says it was cast in an Imperial smelter, and that they are the spoils of the Great Purge, and it's the reason they live hidden. The armorer says that secrecy is their strength, and we get a pretty dumb line from the guy. He says their strength used to be in their numbers, but now they live in the shadows and only come above ground one at a time. One at a time? Seriously? How does this society even function? Aren't most of them bounty hunters? When Mando is out capturing bounties, are they all just eagerly waiting for him to get back so one of them can go grab groceries or something? How do they decide who gets to go out? Because Mando seems to come and go fairly freely. I really don't understand this at all. What is the point of this rule? If they're all so worried about getting found, why do they still wear the most recognizable suits of armor in the galaxy? Everyone knows Mando is Mandalorian the second they see him, so what? The guy then says their world was shattered by the Empire, with whom this coward shares tables. He goes to rip off Mando's helmet and they get into a fight. Mando grabs his knife, which is definitely bigger now by the way, and opens with a full slash across this guy's chest. This really could go either way for me, because if he's trying to actually harm or kill this guy, it seems pretty silly to just slash him right across his armor, but if they're just trying to intimidate each other and show off their skill, it makes enough sense to me. I would give the show the benefit of the doubt here, because they then get the knives to each other's throats, and neither goes in for the kill. so it's easy enough to assume they were just trying to rough each other up. The armorer then stands up and says the Empire is no longer, and the Beskar has been returned. I doubt she realizes that the client Mando got the Beskar from is an Imperial, and that the work Mando did is most likely furthering their goal of bringing the Empire back, but that knowledge does make this line a little funny. She then asks Mando if he's ever removed his helmet, and he says no. She then says, "This is the way." This is weird too, because in the Clone Wars we see Mandalorians taking off their helmets all the time, but it's cool. I'm sure none of the writers have ever seen that show. She then asks him what caused the damage to his armor, and he says it was a mudhorn, and she says that this will be his signet, but Mando refuses because he didn't kill it alone and was helped by an enemy. She says that since he refuses a signet, she'll use the extra to craft some whistling birds, which I know it's probably a pride thing, but if I was in his shoes and I had to decide between a metal symbol and more gadgets for my suit, I'm pretty sure I would take the extra weaponry. Now we see the armor start smelting the armor, and we get more flashbacks from Mando. We see what are essentially the same flashbacks as last time, except now we get to see who the attackers are. It turns out to be the droid army from the prequels, and I won't lie, I really did love this. We get the backstory for why Mando doesn't trust droids, and it's because he lost his family and his whole childhood to them. This makes Mando more relatable, because I assume most people would feel the same way about droids if they were in the same situation. After this, we cut to Greef berating one of his bounty hunters for whatever reason, and Mando walks in sporting his brand new set of armor. I've seen people criticizing this move for being reckless, but I don't know. What could these people possibly do to him? There's no way they'd be able to mug him, right? So unless they all banded together to try to kill him and take it off him, I don't really see what the problem is. Greef congratulates Mando and then tells him that all the bounty hunters hate him because he's a legend. And Mando just asks how many of them had tracking fobs. And Greef says, they all did. Every single one of them was put on this job. Are you fucking kidding me? I've already talked about why this is stupid, but damn, every single person was put on this top secret assignment that had its own special rules to reinforce the level of discretion it required. This show loses its mind many times throughout the season, but this is definitely one of the worst times. Greef tells Mando that all the bounty hunters are weighing the Beskar in their minds, but he's not, because Mando's success is his success. Greef says that even he's rich and shows him 2 pieces of Beskar. 1 piece is what they were handing out as down payments, but 2 pieces makes you rich. Alright, but make sure you notice where he's keeping the Beskar, because that will be important later. Greef asks Mando how he can show his gratitude to him, and Mando just replies that he wants his next job. I mean, he was gone for quite a while on his last job. Is he sure it's not his turn to go hang out in the sewers for a while? I mean, damn, Mando kind of seems like a selfish bastard now. So Greef hands him some pucks and tells him all the bounties are far away, and Mando says the further the better. This is dialogue I do think is really good. Mando obviously feels guilty about giving up Baby Yoda, so his desire to just get away from everything is totally understandable. Mando picks out a puck and begins to head out, but he asks Greef if he has any idea what they're going to do to Baby Yoda, showing more concern and regret for giving him up. Greef says he didn't ask, as it's against the guild code. Mando says they work for the Empire and asks what they're doing here, and Greef responds by saying that the Empire is gone and all that is left are mercenaries and warlords. He then says that if he's so worried by it, he should just go to the core and report them to the New Republic. And Mando replies by saying that's a joke, giving us even more support to the idea that the Imperials really should have just gone and got Baby Yoda themselves. Mando then gets on his ship to leave when he notices the missing ball that Baby Yoda was playing with earlier. And I really have to praise the show here. The amount of emotion we can see from this masked man is pretty incredible. Without any facial expression, we can see the guilt and shame just through his body motions. Mando then shuts down his ship and leaves. He goes back to the place where he had left Baby Yoda and finds his carrier in a dumpster outside. We then cut to him on top of a building with his rifle, and we get to see him use the thermal vision on the scope, which definitely wouldn't have been useful in the last episode. He also tunes something on his helmet which gives him the ability to be able to hear conversations through walls. And I'll be honest, from a subjective standpoint, it really feels like they're giving him way too many abilities way too fast. From the start of the show, he already has laser-proof armor, a rifle that disintegrates people and has a taser function. He's got his grappling hook and his flamethrower, and now he also has the ability to see through walls and listen to conversations at range. I don't know, I just feel like I really would have liked to see him improve his armor and gain gadgets as he goes. Like every time he goes through a challenge that forces him to grow or change as a character, he could also be getting a new piece for his armor. Just a thought. Now, when Mando listens in on the conversation, we hear the Imperial say to the scientist that he orders him to extract the necessary material and be done with it. And the scientist replies, he explicitly ordered us to bring it back alive. And holy shit, we obviously don't know who he is yet, but this show seriously cannot make up its mind about whether or not Baby Yoda is supposed to die. First we're told that the target can be brought in dead or alive, but that alive is preferred. Then we're told that they were specifically ordered to bring the target in dead. They then accept the live bounty without immediately killing it. Then the Imperial says that he wants it dead, and the scientist says they were explicitly ordered to bring it in alive. I really hope you could keep up with me there, because just trying to read that out gave me a headache. I talked about this show completely losing its mind earlier, and this would be another example. It really becomes so hard to tell what the stakes are when the show itself doesn't even know what they are. We never have any idea when to be fearful for Baby Yoda unless the show is explicitly telling us when the order is to kill him. Mando then goes and knocks on the front door of the building and rips the head off of the droid that pops out to scan him. After this, Mando walks away and the door opens to stormtroopers walking out. It then cuts to Mando placing an explosive on the wall, and I really hope he knows Baby Yoda isn't on the other side of it, because that could have been really awkward. We then see a couple of stormtroopers coming into the room to inspect the hole that he just blew, and Mando pops out and shoots both of them. We then get another stormtrooper entering the room to inspect, and Mando beats him down. And I remember on my first watch, when I saw this, I said out loud that the stormtrooper probably isn't dead, and then as Mando is walking away, he just casually shoots him. So I appreciated that. He then walks into a hallway with an unsuspecting stormtrooper, where he grapples him with his hook and stabs him. I think this is an effective and cool use of stealth, but I don't understand why this guard wasn't already looking for him, or at least on alert. I mean, he blew a hole in the side of the damn wall, and we hear an alarm go off right after. I'm not saying it's a bad idea for Mando to try and be stealthy now that he's in the building. I just don't understand why this guard seemed so nonchalant. He then shoots a door panel, which of course opens the door, because this is Star Wars and shooting door panels will always do exactly what you need. When the door opens, the stormtrooper inside actually manages to get a shot off, but of course it hits him in the armor, so better luck next time, I guess. Mando then points his gun at the scientist, who asks him not to shoot, as he's the only reason Baby Yoda is still alive. Even though we were told those were their explicit orders, but whatever. So Mando spares the scientist and takes Baby Yoda. We get another scene of Mando taking on some stormtroopers, and one of them even kind of gets the jump on him. But instead of trying to kill him, he just says freeze and walks up to him with his gun down so he can get electrocuted. We even get to see Mando roast a stormtrooper alive with his flamethrower, so that was cool at least. Mando then gets surrounded by stormtroopers because when they enter the room, he decides to not immediately shoot them like he's been doing the whole time. And they also decide not to immediately shoot at him like the other stormtroopers did. This is interesting. I wonder if this is setting something up, and oh, he uses the weapon he got like no more than a few hours ago. Neat. I will say though, the new weapon is definitely cool. We then cut to a shot of the bounty hunters at the bar, and we see all of their trackers start going off. Obviously, I don't know how these things work, but I assume the Imperial just restarted the bounty tracking or something. So we see all the bounty hunters come out and surround Mando, and he's pretty clearly screwed. Like, he's totally surrounded. Everyone has their guns trained on him, so there's obviously no way he's getting out of this one. Greef tells him that if he puts Baby Yoda down on the speeder, they may let him out alive. So Mando walks over to the speeder because he fully understands that he can't take on this many people by himself. He gives the baby a long, solemn look as he goes to set it down. And oh wait, no. He just shoots a guy and jumps on the speeder. And of course, everyone who was already aiming at him either doesn't shoot or misses by a country fucking mile. Awesome. When are we supposed to feel like he's in danger? Never? Okay, got it. He then yells at the droid to drive, and the droid shakes its head. He then points his gun at it and tells it to drive again. So it does, of course. So does this droid have a sense of self-preservation? Because IG surely didn't. We now get Mando shooting more people and more people missing him, but at least he's behind cover this time. Greef then shoots the droid driving the speeder, causing it to stop, and Mando is still surrounded, so he's definitely screwed this time. He's got no more tricks to pull and no way to escape, so he's definitely dead now, right? Well, he disintegrates more people with his rifle, which scares them into taking cover. Greef then yells to Mando that that's one impressive weapon. While doing this, he signals another bounty hunter to sneak up on him. Mando then says they're going to let him leave with the kid and no one else will have to die. The guy who was sneaking up on Mando now finds him in a very vulnerable position, where he's behind him with a clean shot to his unprotected ribs. And you want to know what this guy does? Well, he doesn't fucking shoot him, that's for sure. No, he decides to just walk up and lightly grab Mando's pants. So Mando turns around and tases the guy, and everyone starts shooting again. Now all the bounty hunters are walking up to the speeder, so he decides to shoot his flamethrower at them. And this scares all of them out of shooting, even the people on the other side of him, who now have a clean shot since he's out of cover. But his flamethrower runs out of gas, so now he's definitely stuck. He's got no hope to fight his way out of this one, for real this time. We even get a shot of him caressing Baby Yoda because he realizes his time is up. So this time he's in danger for sure. No way he's making it out of this one. Oh wait, what's that? A rocket firing overhead? What could that possibly have come from? Why, it's from the Mandalorians, of course. Why didn't I think of that? How did they know? Does his suit have some kind of distress beacon? Because they definitely didn't show us that. And of course they happened to show up just in time to save him. I said before that the Mudhorn fight had the most Deus Ex Machina you can get, but this one might have just beaten it. And it's only one episode later too. That's amazing. This is so excellent. I never want to know what the stakes are in this show. I never want the characters' actions to have logical consequences. No, I want our main character to be put in completely hopeless situations again and again, just to have them written right the fuck out of them. I swear, I have never been ripped out of a show harder than when these guys showed up. Sure, the fight looks amazing, all the effects are flashy and cool, but seriously, who cares about that when we have no idea what is going on here? We don't even get a single line of dialogue explaining how they knew the situation. The guy Mando was fighting with earlier just flies down and tells him to get out of here because this is the way. So now Mando takes Baby Yoda back to his ship and take a guess at who's inside waiting for him. Why, it's his boss, of course. Maybe I'm just missing something here, but seriously, lock your fucking shit, man. There's no way it could be that hard. We know you can lock your ship, so why don't you do it? You literally leave your fucking ship in the parking lot completely unlocked. Why is Mando so stupid? Why? But now Grief's got him held up at gunpoint, and since the last scene already shattered any sense of stakes we may have had, I don't know how they expect me to feel about this man holding him up with a blaster while he's wearing blaster-proof armor, but yeah, that's what's happening right now. Grief tells him he didn't want it to come to this, but Mando broke the code. He then looks over at his carbonite rectangle and shoots his grappling hook at it, which makes it real foggy. Grief shoots a couple of shots and misses because he can't see. He then gets shot right in the chest, so I guess Grief is dead now. It's too bad, really. I liked him as a character and would have liked to see more of him, but I guess that's just how it goes sometimes. I mean, you can't take a blaster bolt to the chest and expect to survive. So Mando takes off in his ship and leaves Grief to die. We even get a quick shot of him lying on the ground motionless. But wait, it cuts back to Grief and he's still alive! Remember when I told you to take note of where he kept his Beskar? Well, you'd never believe it. He got shot right there. How amazingly lucky that he got shot in literally the only spot that wouldn't have killed him. It must have been the Force, right guys? Mando is now flying his ship to leave the planet, and we get this nice shot of one of his Mandalorian buddies, who ditched the fight I guess, flying on his jetpack up to give Mando a salute. I'm pretty sure they just wanted to get Mando off the planet so he would stop hogging all of the above ground time. Mando then gives Baby Yoda the little ball from earlier and he flies off. And that ends episode 3. Sweet goodness gracious, Lord of Heaven above, what an episode. When I first decided I wanted to make this series, I was thinking of what kind of format I wanted to use. And the original title I was going to go with was going to be The Mandalorian, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. This is because I honestly remembered the first 3 episodes as being extremely good. I was fully planning on practically just praising these first 3 episodes. I had no idea what I was in for until I went back to watch this season, and now I'm a little nervous. Because these scripts are ending up way longer than I thought they would, and they're for the episodes I thought were good. However, as for a sort of conclusion on these first 3 episodes, I'll just say that I don't hate them. They are nowhere near perfect, and they were at the very least enjoyable for me to watch. There are just so many immersion-breaking writing errors that make it so much harder to stay invested, that it really starts to wear down on me. I know I mainly focused on the negatives in this video, but I want people to know that there are elements of this show that work very well. There are little glimmers of hope among all the poor writing. The CGI was obviously nailed, and the editing was generally on point. There are definitely mistakes in editing here and there, but nothing that totally kills it for me. Mando's teleportation abilities are certainly an issue, but I wouldn't call it show-breaking. And I guess that brings us to the end of part 1. For those of you watching this that made it all the way through, I just want to say that I very much appreciate it. And please, if there's something in this series that I missed, or if you think I've messed up somewhere, I would really love to hear it. I will most likely be in the editing process for part 2 by the time this video releases, so if there are things I can fix or append, I would love to hear it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.